So welcome, Trey. We have Trey Hill here on our Zoom chat, and I'm Pamela Tanner Boll. And what we're doing here is revisiting some of the folks who were in our film To Which We Belong, to find out what they're up to now. Trey Hill is the owner and let's see, what do you call yourself at Harborview Farms?
Owner, CEO maybe, or
Yeah.
whatever needs to be done person. So
So Harborview Farms is on the Maryland shore, right on the near the Chesapeake Bay, and it's comprised, I believe, of 13,000 acres. Is that correct?
yes, yep, it's scattered over about 80 different farms that we rent and own. But yeah, it's roughly there.
So when we interviewed him back in 20, I think it was 2020 or maybe 2021. No, it was 2020. We were talking to him about his regenerative practices on this very large, what we might call conventional farm. You still growing corn, wheat, and soybeans primarily?
Yeah, so we've taken on barley fairly significantly, but it's fair. I'd say it's similar to wheat.
All right. So let me ask you, Trey, since we spoke to you, I do believe it was 2020. I understand that you're now on something called the Carbon Council at the Farm Journal. Is that correct?
Yeah, I'm on a few different things. So I'm on the Carbon Council with Farm Journal. We're still working with Nori on carbon credits. So we're still selling carbon credits. We had started in 19, so that was still fairly fresh. It was kind of part of the whole, all of COVID, right? I think when we did the filming of the film, we were fully masked and I got to remove my mask when we talked, and it was a whole crazy thing. So we sold some carbon credits in 19. I have carbon credits for sale now through Nori, so that's still going strong. The Carbon Council's been fun. It's a pretty neat group of folks that get together to discuss future strategies. And so we're still working through one in practices. We're still improving all the time, but we're also trying to figure out kind of what the future looks like. We're trying to navigate that world of how do we future proof the farm, if you will, or what's the best strategy, or kind of what's the best directionality that we need to be taking on.
Well, back in 2020, I believe you were earning something like $100,000 from your carbon sequestration, according to Nori's calculations.
Mm-hmm.
What have you done this year? Is it?
We're doing the same thing again. So we took the same acreage, and in 19, we were paid for 16, 17, and 18 is where we had sequestered the credits.
Okay.
So then we went and they let you realign every 3 years. So it's each sequential year that we sequester carbon. So then we took from this batch would be from 19, 20, and 21 that then got rolled up into a certification. And, it takes a while to go through the process in order to garner those extra credits. And it actually ended up being about the same amount. So we're still sequestering about the same amount of carbon, given the cover crops, the no-till, and everything else. So based on the modeling that they do, the market price has stayed about the same. So the money's pretty much, it seems to be about the same. We may enroll a few more acres, but we're also working on some regenerative certifications and trying to market that as possibly, it would be separate from carbon credits, but it would be more tied to the product or towards like an insetting approach as opposed to a true carbon credit.
Got it. I think the Savory Institute is doing something like that. They're looking at the practices and then giving some sort of certification according to that. I know a lot of people are working in that realm now.
They're organic regen, and I haven't really been able to. We've tried it, and we're trying to limit chemicals and get our nitrogen use efficiency and things like that down, but we haven't really had a great deal of success yet.
Interesting. Why do you think that is?
It's exceptionally challenging. I think people have wanted to do no-till and not use chemicals for 100 years or for 1,000,000 years. So we just have not been able to do it successfully at this point. Like I said, I view it more as a journey. I'm not looking to run a marathon my first day back running. So we're just kind of working our way up through it. And, if I make it to a marathon at some point, that's great. Or if it's my daughter that runs the marathon, that's even better. So we're just slowly doing it in through so we can keep a pretty good business operating and kind of limit the risk, I guess. If you get into regenerative, you increase risk and you increase complexity within the farming operation because you're changing everything and you're going to something new. So trying to do that, but also do a calculated, kind of stay at the leading edge, or what they say, the leading edge and not the bleeding edge type thing. So still working through that and trying to maintain yields and economics as as things go on.
Makes sense. So you're still using cover crops and planting into green. And what about the perimeter? I remember back in the day, you were concerned also about the perimeter of the row crops. You were doing some milkweed or something like that on those edges.
Yeah, we try to sometimes keep we use chemicals, which isn't ideal, but it's kind of the way we manage our cover crops so that we won't have to do any tillage. And a lot of times if we have a border that we can leave, we'll leave that edge unsprayed, let the crops grow through it. But what it does is it increases our pollinator habitat, but also our wildlife habitat. And in theory, hopefully keeps like the deer and the things that normally eat our crops, it gives them something to eat as kind of a filter prior to walking into the field. So we're still doing some of that. We still have the one pollinator habitat at the home farm, but we haven't really gone full large scale on that or implemented it in other places. It's still fairly impractical to do just because it grows up in weeds and there's maintenance associated with it. So we haven't really progressed a whole lot there.
That's okay. So you're able to still grow your 3 main or 4 main crops at this point, but you're enriching the soil with the cover crops, even if you're using chemicals to kill them after or are you just using cover crops on both ends of the growing season?
We use the cover crops and we plant into the fields while they're still green. So we have living roots all year long. That's kind of the basis of it. There's many different gradients of regenerative. I'm at the more conventional side, whereas you can get into the regenerative organic or the pastured perennial pastures, which would be, way above where I am, right? I would not argue that what I'm doing is better. I would say it's worse, but it's what's practical for Harborview at the moment. But we are increasing organic matter in the soil, which is what I use as a pretty significant gradient. So we have gone through 2 or 3 different certifications for regenerative practices, and we get a lot of soil health testing done, which we usually rate pretty high. We're not off the charts. We're not perennial pastures. I'm not trying to sell it as such. But we have increased the organic matter. We can test the top 6 inches and then go from 6 to 12 and pull a separate test, which when we used to plow, we would plow to 18 inches. So the soil was homogenized. And now we can see a significant difference in that top 6 compared to the next 6 in organic matter. We had an intern last summer that took 20 years worth of soil tests off of 2 of the farms that we own. And he did a full statistical analysis and showed the increase in organic matter over time. But similar to like an environmental cleanup or looking at like water quality in the bay, I would like to see the organic matter increase or double every year. But you're lucky to get like 3%, right? So if you've got a 3% organic matter soil, going to 3.1 is significant, but it just seems like it's like watching paint dry. You're just like, it's like, what am I doing here? Like I'm doing all this work and I'm doing all this stuff, and I should be able to, I should be like my soil should be like Iowa now, but they're, the soil is soil, but we are seeing increases in organic matter. We're seeing better water holding capacity. We had a drought last summer for a period, and you could see that my crops were less stressed than a lot of my neighbors, which meant a lot to me because it meant what I'm doing is better, which is what is my goal. So we're working through those. And like I said, we are seeing improvement. And I suppose by my definition of regenerative is, that we're regenerating the soils.
Oh, absolutely.
Well, like I said,
that's the best stuff. Yeah.
It's not the best, but it's better. So as long as I can stay on
definition that you're regenerating the soils.
Yeah. So we're doing that. We're accomplishing that. Whether or not we're labeled as such and whatnot is not relevant to me. It's, it's my own personal mission that of constant improvement. So
got it. I also understand that you're going to be speaking at a conference in the Netherlands in May.
Yeah, I usually speak at F&A next. It's food and agriculture next. It's kind of it's a high, oh, what it is. I guess it's the where the venture capital world marries up to ag tech space.
That
Um,
sounds great.
yeah, it's a great conference. I recommend anybody going. I've been the last 2 years, and it's really a lot of fun just from a learning perspective, because not only is it food and ag, but it's food and ag in Europe, which, is a little bit different than here, but the farmers are the same. It's just the consumers are a little different. So yeah, that's a lot of fun, and I'm looking forward to that. And then we have, I'm hoping we've had French interns from France the last 3 years. And then this year we're supposed to have, I think I've got a German student coming in March and then another French student coming in June. So we're trying to kind of keep all the dialogues open that we can.
That sounds great. So what will you be speaking about at the conference?
Regenerative ag.
On your property.
Yeah, it's kind of my wheelhouse. I don't know much else. I have very few areas of expertise, but due to a host of experiences and failures along the way, I've become an expert on it, just by being able to share that. So I think there's so many different pockets, and depending on where you are, if you're in the regenerative organic field, what I'm doing doesn't seem that significant. But if you get out into the conventional agriculture world and you see where people are doing a lot of tillage still, or they're still not really looking at nitrogen use efficiencies and things that we're doing, it's quite significant. So I think farmers are looking for ways to do it. And a lot of times the best way for a farmer to learn is from peer-to-peer learning. That's how I've learned most of my stuff, is from talking to other growers and just figuring out what they're doing and learning from their mistakes and commiserating or celebrating our victories, either one. And I think that's what it'll be. And like I said, it's in Europe, but the farmers are the same everywhere. The only thing is they're restricted on their chemistry. So some of the tools in my toolbox, they can't use.
A lot of the things that we use, right?
It's not that many. There's about 3 chemicals. Roundup's more limited. I think they can still use it. And paraquat and atrazine are banned. But beyond that, it's pretty much the same. The seeds are the same. The chemicals are the same. They still do a lot more tillage than we do.
Really?
Yeah. It's crazy. Like, I've always thought that farming, like, the biggest impediment is always like our multi-generational approach to farming, right? It's like one of the few businesses where it's families. Like, I talk to environmentalists and they're like, why don't farmers switch? And I'm like, because their dad won't let them. And I mean, it's true, right? There's like a whole psychology to all of this stuff. And there's a lot, there's always underlying things that no one thinks about. And you go to Europe and they're like 8 and 9 generations in, they're 300 years in. So it's even more ingrained, I think. But yeah, they're still struggling to get to no-till. The farms are typically a little smaller. They're a little more concentrated. So I think that you get, just for different reasons, but yeah, there's still a lot of tillage, and they've got their Green New Deal where they want everything no-till and they want everything cover cropped, and the farmers are struggling to adapt and adopt it. And they need folks that have done it before. Now the environment's completely different and everyone lives in a different area and all that, but it's helpful to figure it out. And then throwing in biologicals, and I think there's some great new opportunities, which is part of the reason for learning and going over there, is how do we, start to bring down synthetics and use less chemicals and replace them with biologicals and maintain yields and that sort of thing.
Mm-hmm. Great. Well, what are you excited about right now in your life and your work here in the regenerative conventional switchover space?
I don't know. I'm still trying to figure out how to market it. I think if we could get consumers in it, not only for myself, but I think for holistic change, we need something else driving the boat. The captain we have now is, okay, farmers should be altruistic. They should want to do this. And that's the reason that you would switch. And I'd say there's a lot of validity to that, right? I mean, farmers are tight to the land. They're tied to the land. It's usually a family business and they want to do what's right, but it's, how do you make that change and how do you do it? And my hypothesis is that if we can get into the consumer markets, and the farmer, then a big part of my journey has been joining the, Shore Rivers and the River Keepers and the Chesapeake Bay Foundation, and having to have that self-reflection on a social level. Mm-hmm. And I think that that's not going to happen everywhere, because everywhere doesn't live on the Chesapeake Bay, right? I mean, it's because of the concentration of the populace and the value of the bay and the waterways and all that. But if you go somewhere that doesn't have that, what's the other social I'd say pressure, but it's not really a pressure. Social support would probably be a better term.
Yeah.
So if you're in the grocery store and you see Harborview Farms on a label as regenerative, and then they can scan that and see me, I've got a lot to live up to, right? All of a sudden there's a whole nother level of expectations, hopefully another level of pay, hopefully there's a premium associated with it because I'm, sending along the insetting or some type of carbon analysis or carbon or regenerative specs. I'm doing Regenified, which is a real neat company. They came in and I'm a tier 3 Regenified grower. So hopefully they're helping develop markets where maybe we take like a malted barley, it goes into a premium whiskey, and the premium whiskey then says, hey, this whiskey, the barley for this whiskey was grown by Harborview Farms. Here's their story. Here's what they've done. Maybe there's a clip to which we belong, and it's there, and it's, what was the carbon footprint of the barley? Okay, well, we can figure that out. It might not be a full scope 3, but hey, look, he's doing it better. It's better, right? You can feel good about drinking this bourbon that has been grown regeneratively, and I think that lifts me up. That puts that, hand on my back as I'm cycling uphill against the wind. That's a huge support. And I think that stuff would be really cool. So that's what I'm excited about. And that's what I'm hoping comes to fruition. I've thrown a lot of darts at this board, and I won't say that I've hit the bullseye yet. I might hit a 20, but we're still a little ways out, but it's fun. So that's kind of what I'm excited about and what I'm trying, trying to do to get developed. I think it'd be fun. And then hopefully it also turns into usually stuff that's fun and you can get excited about and passionate about can lead to a profit, because you can figure that out within it.
It's interesting that you're talking about this because I don't know if you recall, but in the film we had the head of agriculture and freshwater in the film. It's ridiculous. I can't pull his name. He's a good friend, actually. And I asked him, they work around the world. And I know you work with the Nature Conservancy too, or at least have some connection with them. Michael Doan.
Yep. Yeah, I've seen him a couple times since.
Yeah, he's a great guy. So I said to him, what is it that's driving these large companies, these large food processing companies to buy regenerative? And he said, it's their shareholders. They're all over it. So I don't know where that puts somebody like you who doesn't, you're not a large, but when you do you sell to some of these companies? I'm just curious.
My grain goes all over. So the corn and beans all go into the chicken market, and the chicken market hasn't really grabbed a hold yet. It all goes to chicken feed. And getting stuff through an animal seems to still be kind of a big challenge because you've got huge quantities of grain, huge infrastructure around the chicken business. All the numbers are in the millions, if you're talking about bushels or pounds of chicken or whatever. And I don't think they've really gotten into the whole carbon footprinting yet. Purdue, I think, has worked on it a little bit and found that people wouldn't pay for it. So they kind of backed off. PepsiCo seems to be leading the charge. I think a lot of it is more the companies that are going direct to consumer. So when you drink a Pepsi, you're drinking high fructose corn syrup that came, it can be tied right to the corn. Whereas through the animal has been a little more challenging. And due to my geography, that's where it goes. Where our wheat goes into snack foods, which I think there's a lot of potential there. I haven't gotten it yet. I know the Nature Conservancy works with like Campbell's and different ones. Like Campbell's does goldfish, for example, snack crackers. Yep. And my theory, I have no way to get to them, but maybe this podcast will end up there. But if I could get my wheat into the goldfish, then the mother or father that's buying the goldfish for their child, to me, that's a pretty easy marketing play. To know the farm that it came from is using less chemicals and less nitrogen. It might not be organic, but it'd still be a Prepper's Farm goldfish. So I think that's where it would, but I haven't gotten involved. I haven't gotten anywhere to where I've gotten paid for it or labeled yet.
Okay, great.
I had a little deal on malting barley with Guinness, and we did an Earth Day beer. So at the brewery in Baltimore, the beer that was served on Earth Day had the Harborview label on it, along with the maltster, and it was certified regenerative. So I'm working with Proximity now. We just got certified regenerative, and they're paying me a premium for the barley, and then they're going to segregate my barley before they malt it. The malting process is like sprouting it and heating it and cooling it. I don't fully understand it, but anyway, they'll take my barley alone, and then they have a big tub that's holds like 6 truckloads, and it'll be all Harborview barley that's certified regenerative. They've analyzed the 5 fields that it came from, and they've gone through this whole analysis of it. And then they will sell a brand of malt that's regenerative from Harborview.
Great.
So I'm hoping if that works, then I could go to like First State Brewery, which is, like our local brewery. And I've been in there and talked to them before. And I'm like, hey, I'm a barley grower and I do a great job. I'm your neighbor. And they're like, oh, let's buy it. But there's really never been a way to put all that together. So I'm hoping that this is going to kind of put all those pieces together. And even if they don't pay a premium for it, how cool would it be to go to First State Brewery to get I get a beer, and then, Harborview Farms grew this, it just, to me, it's just fun.
Yeah, that does sound fun and helpful
Mhm.
for our soils, which are depleted. So
If you can get the regenerative word out there, then, the consumer's drinking the beer, maybe they say, oh, well, what is regenerative? Well, then they look it up. Then they're like, oh, well, why can't I get regenerative bread, or why can't I get regenerative? I think just getting that first couple steps would be really paramount in making change.
I so agree. So we're just beginning, but from what I hear from Michael Doan and some other folks who are, working at the UN level and all of those things, people are really getting on board. It's just not trickled down quite to the local producers, perhaps, which I think it will.
Yeah.
So what about your daughter? The last time we came out there, she seemed to be kind of interested, or you said not so interested in farming. Did she decide to do that uh, she's in college now, or is she?
Yeah, she's a junior in high school. So she's definitely moving more in the agriculture direction, which was it's been surprising. It's been fun. And I think that a big part of it is the regenerative piece. I think her generation is different than my generation. And I think having social impact, which is, what we teach as a family anyway, and being able to make a difference in the world, and how are you going to do that? And how are you going to inspire change? And how are you going to make the world better should be all part of the life that we live, as we're fairly privileged folks. And I think that farming offers all that, right? I don't think 20 years ago anyone would have thought that. It wasn't really, you're feeding the world and you're feeding people, but I think now that you can have an effect on climate and all these different issues, I think that's kind of gotten her more excited. She's planning on, I want her to study business. She wants to study science. So she's taking organic chemistry and she's doing great in it and she loves it. And she's like, I'm going to study science. And I'm like, okay, but you need an MBA, but we won't get into my personal stuff. So we're working through that. So, but yeah, she's looking at ag schools. So like I said, she's a junior. So we've looked at one, and we looked at Cornell. She wants to look at Purdue. She wants to look at Virginia Tech. So we've got a list, of schools to go look at and see kind of what might work and what might not.
That sounds exciting. I'm kind of on your page though about getting the MBA also, or business, background at least.
Mm-hmm.
So if I had anything that I don't regret this. I have 3 sons who are now grown, and my youngest wanted to study film. And I'm like, don't do that. Don't do that. You already make films. I said, go and do an English degree so you understand how to put stories together. And
Right.
He didn't take my advice. He's doing great, but still, it was funny.
Yeah, and my advice is probably wrong. So I always try to be self-aware enough to know that what I'm recommending.
Could be, but I don't agree that it's wrong. I think it's right.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah. Well, it's great catching up with you. Is there anything that you, well, actually, before we end, I was supposed to get some kind of ding. Oh, she did ding me. I'm not good at timekeeping. I just wanted to make sure before we left that you gave us the places where people can find out more about your farm and your work, and just, give us the
Yeah, I'm pretty slack when it comes to all of that. Unfortunately, I'm not very good at self-promoting. I'd say to which belongs the most promotion I've ever had. We do have an Instagram page. It tends to be more sprayers and combines and stuff like that. It's run by my team. It's more of a conventional farm. LinkedIn is probably where I communicate the most. I haven't posted anything in probably 4 or 5 months, but one of my goals for the year is to post more and to offer more up to kind of get that going. Our website is probably a little out of date. Honestly, we probably haven't touched it in a year, but that's on the list of goals for this year too. So harborviewfarms.net, Trey Hill on LinkedIn, and Harborview Farms on Instagram.
Great. I looked at your website. I thought it was pretty good.
Oh, great. Yeah, we just need to update it. So
Yeah.
we'll get to it.
I thought it was really good, actually.
Oh, thank you. That's one of those things that's easy to put off though. It's
I know, believe me. Well, it's been so nice to talk to you. And again, Trey Hill, who was a participant in our film, To Which We Belong. And if anybody who is listening here or looking at watching, and you haven't seen the film, you can go to towhichwebelong.com. And we have an Instagram page, and
there's usually a picture of my daughter and I walking through a wheat field.
yes. You were the last picture in our movie.
I check it out every time I see it on a post. I'm like, oh.
Well, it was great, believe me. All right. So nice to talk to you, Trey. Thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate the time.